Okay, last video got cut off. Everything had to go through the woman first, or the indigenous tribal mothers. Okay. And also, we start looking at timelines. So we see the timelines usually in the 1600s all the way up to the 1800s, where we see on the eastern side of the United States is the United States starting. But the rest of the country is still occupied by Spain, France, Russia, the Dutch, and there are still indigenous people all over the place. And so, with the witch trials, first you come in and you conquer because women were gatherers. They always hung out together. If there was some kind of trouble, you knew there were other women around who, no matter what they looked like, what tribe they were from, women stuck together. Women protected each other as well. As the men protected the village and the women also stuck together and protected each other. And we see this today, like walk in numbers and even in certain religious groups where you see the women coming together and the men coming together. So with the witch trials, and in this story of this beautiful sister, Tituba, where she admits that she was practicing witchcraft because her owner basically forced her into admitting it. And even her, the person who came with her as a servant had to testify against her. And what happens is this whole frenzy happened, even here within the United States colonies, and what happened in the European colonies is this fear of other women. Women becoming terrified of other women, daughters and sisters and children having to testify each other. What better way to solidify the separation of the women? Even to this day, we have really bought into, and I've been part of it, I think all people have been part of it, to conforming to a certain mindset of competition. Even the word witch, bitch has been circulated from that time. And we must remember that the first person who was accused was a person of color who was actually American Indian and has now been called Negro. And then through these stories, things like voodoo, very scary witchcraft, black magic have been exaggerated. Now, this is very important, and this is a very tricky part of this. All of us have been taught that we were brought from Africa, and all of us have this, many of us, let me say many of us, I did, had this strong attachment to Africa, to my homeland. This is where I came from. This is where my ancestors are from. This is where all our ancestors are from. And the more and more I do research, I am recognizing that I'm not from Africa. My people are not from Africa. I have this attachment to a country that doesn't claim me, that this country has told me I came from, so that I wouldn't remember that this continent, the United States, North America, and South America, were called both Ethiopia, Guinea, the land of the blacks, the land of the copper-colored skinned people. This is where we're from. And between the Panama Canal and those who were on ships that at the time were called Moors, whether they were of color or not, a ship in general, a ship docked is called a Moor. And those who were on ships were available to be sold as slaves. Basically, if you were on a ship, you could be sold as a slave. That did not mean that you came from Africa. They're telling us we came from Africa so that we don't remember that this is our land, and also that we don't remember that we're related to everybody. So those that we call the Aztecs and the Aztecs and the Mayans, they come from the Olmechis, which were very dark looking, what people say negroid, black, big noses, big lips, eyes of all different kinds of shapes. And also, South America is far older than Egypt. There are pyramids and relics far older. And so even with that story, it's been flipped around. This continent received those from Atlantis, not the other way around. This continent, the Grand Canyon, many secrets, old trees, ancient beings, underground beings, the ant people, ancient, Orisha, Kachina, very similar. The indigenous ways of practicing religion and the African ways of practicing religion, very, very similar. So I'm sharing this because we see the breakdown of eliminating the feminine power, the feminine truth, religion. Everything comes from the woman, comes from the mother, comes from the planet. This is basic common sense. And then we think about things where we hear people say Amazons are African. Well, why is the Amazon in South America? If slavery started in 1614, why are there documents saying that slavery didn't actually start and racism didn't actually start until 1678, 1680s, almost 100 years later? And why is it that there was slavery happening on the east part of this country and indigenous missionary homes and new schools and expos taking up 636 acres of land? We don't recognize that as slavery or separation or reappropriation of the true indigenous people that were here. Even the American Indians that are here, many of them don't know that their ancestors were black. Blackfoot, Crow, how do you get those names? We know that in these cultures, people are named after nature. And another little small side note, this country has tons of turkeys, so many turkeys that Benjamin Franklin wanted to make this bird the national bird over the bald eagle. Do you know there's no turkeys in Turkey? So we have countries that had names then that associated to this country. And now we have new countries named after the most wealthiest, rich lands of the world. And that's this part of the world, because if Africa was so important and so rich and so full of prosperity, knowledge, why was everyone coming over here? And why did everyone stay? And why did they lie to us and tell us that we came from Africa when we came from here and they just moved us around? There's so many rights that we have because of this. So besides the knowledge of who we are, then we see that we actually have rights to the land. And this is a lot of the manipulation, even within the American Indians that are told that they are true American Indians. This is on purpose so that they never have a right to their treaties. And then we're told we're from Africa, so we never have any right to those treaties, or that we never come together with everyone to help make these treaties happen. How about that? Thank you for joining me. See you next time. Peace and love.